welcome everyone to this edition of the British Book Club Projectiology. So today we have here Alexander Stein and Jeffrey Lloyd. So, but before, just let everyone knows that we are recording this session. So we'll be recording just till the debate. So the debate, when we go to our break rooms, is not going to be recorded. So we can talk freely, and that's it. Also, just remind everyone to answer the poll. Our poll, Michiko will put the link here in the chat, and also sending our groups. So just please answer the poll so we can see, follow our development with these studies. And okay, I think that's it. Michiko, is there anything else we have to?
No, that's it, Magali. We can start.
That's all? Okay. So Alexander Stein is from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and currently lives in Foz do Iguaçu, Paraná, Brazil. He's a physician, radiologist, and served as university professor between 2004 and 2009. He is being a volunteer in Conscientiology since 1986. He was the founder of IIPC, International Institute of Projectiology and Conscientiology. He viewer and typist for Dr. Waldo's Vieira books between 1992 and 1999. He is the founder of CAEC, Center for Highest Study in Conscientiology, and president of IIPC from December 1999 to October 2004. He was also a general coordinator of IIPC from October 2004 to February 2006, founder of the OIC, International Organization for Conscientiotherapy, and founder of AXINVEX, the International Association for Existential Inversion. He is also a teacher of SCP-2 and the Acoplamentário, the author of several courses on energy. He is the founder of and coordination of Energosomatic GPC, Consciential Research Group, since August 2004. He has been a conscientiotherapist since December 2011 and a member of a council of EPICON since 2003. He currently is the coordinator for Interpares. Jeffrey Lloyd is from Dunedin, New Zealand, and is a university-educated independent researcher and a teacher of the neuroscience of projectiology and conscientiology since 1999. He currently resides in Australia and is involved in projects to help expand and internationalize conscientiology, consciousness research, and self-experimentations. So I handed this to our facilitators now.
Hi guys, thank you for the introduction, Magali, Michiko, the team. Alex, do you want to say a quick hello to everyone before we start to share the slide deck and talk through some of the points in the chapters?
I just want to say hi to everybody, and okay, let's do it.
Let's go. I'm just going to share my screen here, guys. Bear with me. Should be this one. So it's a really interesting bunch of chapters this week, I think. I think we probably have a few. Tell me if you can see the slide.
Yep.
Be able to. I think we've had the Christmas holiday time, and so there's not a lot of people as we often have, but it's nice to be here with you guys. And these chapters are really interesting and perhaps really relevant given the time of the year and what happens usually around all this time. So we're going to be talking a lot about the mental soma, and then, as you would have seen, we get up to chapter, I think it's 155, ultimately the end. So obviously there's a lot of material in those chapters and we can't talk about everything. But what we've tried to do here is sort of grab main points and then even amongst those emphasize some of these things. So I'm not going to just read these slides, but we'll just sort of talk through generally what we're looking at. So over on the right hand side, there's a depiction here of the hollow soma. So us as an individual, we each manifest through all of these different bodies that are sort of represented here. We won't talk about them in detail here, but just to really show them, and we'll talk about a few aspects of them. So, you know, from the soma, the physical body, the one where, you know, the old rustic body of meat that we're all very familiar with. But then we get to the more subtle bodies and the bodies that persist with us across multiple lives. The interesting thing about the mental soma is it's very hard to pinpoint in our evolution when exactly the mental soma starts to exist and grow and develop. But we can see some things that we can do to accelerate that process as we move along. At this point here, the first highlighted point, or the not highlighted but bolded point, the consciousness, us as an individual, when we had lives as a plant, right? We vegetated. So sometimes I call myself, you know, we can joke and we say, you know, I feel like a vegetable today. You know, and sometimes we sort of are vegetating way more than we should. When we had lives, and then after we had countless number of lives, not countless, but a big number of lives as plants and different types of plants, and then we became a subhuman animal, we sensualize. So sensualize has a lot to do with the senses, a lot to do with the instincts. And then ideally in evolution, in consciential evolution, we intellectualize when we're a human being. So in this level of evolution that this body facilitates and provides us, we are able to start to intellectualize, and this is where the mental soma, this is what the mental soma is responsible for. And you can see the mental soma depicted here on the far right and this picture down on the bottom right. It's like this golden ball of light, this orb, this entity, but it's formless, it's shapeless, so to speak. It's very unlike the other bodies, which you can see are represented in a way looking similar to like a human body or something like that, even though their properties are quite. So this intellectualization really occurs because of the mental soma. So this mental soma, it's something which develops over the course of time, over all of these lives. You could think of it as like we're slowly aggregating and accumulating abilities, skills. We're refining what we are as a consciousness. And so there's a classic image that we use in conscientiometry where you've got like a piece of coal and like a diamond. And the piece of coal is one state, but as we come under pressure, we have challenges, we overcome them, we grow, we change. The diamond becomes polished, more and more polished, or actually comes into existence and then starts to be sort of polished. And that's an analogy for what we go through in consciential evolution. Alex, is there anything you want to add around that particular piece?
No, I think it's okay.
Okay,
can go.
So
one thing. I remember when we were talking about the revegetation. I remember about he makes a correlation. We're going to talk later on chapter 154, comparisons between the mental soma of the intraphysical and extraphysical conscientiousness. And one thing that caught me attention at that chapter is when he speaks about the adaptation. The more unconsciously adapted to intraphysical consciousness is the human environment, the less he feels the physical restriction of human life. She is fully well adjusted, like autocted to his or her environment or habitat. So I think that's interesting, the correlations between what he's talking about in this chapter and what he's gonna explain more later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice point. So just on that, so the parapsychophysiology of the mental soma, and so this is like very hard to describe, because for example, when you talk about the physiology of the soma, and Alex is a specialist in this, right, the medical side of his training, right, you can understand, you know, the bones and the muscles and the tendons and ligaments and the veins and the blood vessels and all the rest, all the organs and everything. Parapsychophysiology of the mental soma is you know, and they already mentioned that it's formless, it's shapeless, and so, but it grows and it evolves, and it's the essence of who we are. So the key of that is like, how do we understand that? How can we study that? So just a few ideas here where we're just capturing, and then we've got the idea of that the first one I've emphasized here is the mental soma being responsible for the consciousness's elevated sentiments. So this shows us that the centralization that we have through the psychosoma essentially doesn't have such refined, elevated sentiments. We can have raw emotions, we can have things like that, like this cat is having now. Let me deal with him. Hopefully that was not too disturbing. So that is like the body responsible for less elevated emotions is the psychosoma. But the mental soma, we have elevated sentiments. So with elevated sentiments, that allows us to enter into a tranquility and an expansion of awareness and lucidity and discernment. And that's sort of the key what we're looking at, because we want to get to the point where we have rational self-experimentation. And we use that ability that the mental soma provides us to reflect on things. So it's through the mental soma that we reflect, that we have discernment, and that we develop our lucidity. And one of the key points here, I love this little phrase, is we can't argue with the facts. And this is interesting, particularly in this time where we see so much division and arguments in the world that are seem to be, in a lot of cases, a lot of waste of time and energy, and aren't really productive. But it's because people sort of distort facts or we all interpret the facts in the way we're able to, but how well are we interpreting those facts? How impartially are we being? How much is our psychosoma, our emotions, influencing and perhaps being the predominant vehicle in the way we're thinking? So that's the challenge we have at the moment around that. Alex, any thoughts on this one so far?
No, okay.
Okay. This chapter is a really complex chapter, the relativistic space-time. It's quite a head trip. It takes a while to try to understand what they're really talking about. And a lot of it comes down to physics and starts to head into quantum physics as well. And so it's very much, you know, Einstein, the founder of many of these theories and ideas. Essentially, you're talking about how time is dependent on sort of a frame of reference, for example, here in the physical dimension. But when we start to think of things in multidimensionality, we can see that space loses its isolated character and time ceases to be independent from the frame of reference. So it takes a while, and I still need to read this chapter even though I've read it a few times, to understand more about what it's trying to say. But the idea being essentially is that we deal with a lot of things that are intangible. And it's easy in this world to say, oh, if it's intangible, if I can't feel it, I can't see it, I can't touch it, it's nonsense to try to talk about it. And that is not always necessarily a fair approach. It's an understandable approach, but it's a very biased and prejudicial approach. And if we want to try to be more scientific, you know, dealing with things that are intangible, that we can't see, feel, touch, makes a lot of sense, particularly when you start to develop parapsychism. And this is a lot to do where the mental soma starts to assist us more in that process as well. So, and just relating it to the mental soma, that last sentence here, the mental soma remains independent from matter and the forces between matter. So it coexists in the space, but without any metric. The phrase "everything is nothing and nothing is everything" is a phrase that is quite mental somatic in nature. It's sort of quite analogous to what we're trying to talk about in this regard. We say in the mental somatic dimension, there is no past and there is no future. There's no delineation in time. There's just everything exists. And this is a concept that in our world, with our conditioning in this physical body, it's very hard to get our head around.
It's hard to understand. And anyway, one thing that I think it's important to understand, it's even if you can go back in past, you can change it. You can't change it. Okay, so you can have a rememoration of the past, but not change it.
Yeah. You can change your interpretation of things. You could change your perspective and your understanding of things. And to a degree, it doesn't change what happened, but it changes the impacts in you and the ripples that you generate as a consequence.
Yeah, I think that's the purpose of going back in past, to gain a perspective of what happened and what this means to you now.
Yep, I think that's spot on. I can completely agree. And there's been some good books written. For example, you know, self-cure through self-reconciliation, for example, is a good one from Malu Bologna that talks about the past and the self-reconciliation process with that and so forth. So there's good books out there on this stuff. So just as we're trying to talk about the parapsychophysiology, how does the mental soma work and operate at a very high level we just touched on, there's also the parapsychopathology, right? So issues that the mental soma often has. Remember, you know, one of the key things that Dr. Vieira always emphasized is lucidity. Key attribute, you know, lucidity, be lucid, understand, be aware of what's going on, who's around, physically, extra-physically, the energies. So the parapsychopathology, right, one of the biggest ones of those is a lack of lucidity or a loss of self-awareness, unconsciousness. And that's one of the most common post-desomatic, so after we have desomed, and I'll describe in more detail what that is very shortly. That's one of the biggest problems we have. So after we die, being lucid, understanding our condition, dealing with that reality, dealing with it in a good way, and not being like, as described here in this very last line on the slide, you know, being a parapsychotic concierge, where we're continuously hungering for energies for people who still have physical bodies and still have all the denser energies associated with that. And the next chapter, I think, the next few ones will show us a little bit more on that. There's a few therapeutic techniques and stuff which I talked about there in the chapter, this parapsychodrama and restorative sleep. And I'm going to rush a little bit just for time, but we can come back and discuss these in more detail if need be. It's quite a comprehensive chapter, but I wanted to jump and get to here and show, well, what are these bodies? What are the denser energies? So these bodies here, the soma, and the energosoma, they're the denser energies we were talking about. So they're a consciousness that has died and is hungering for consciential energies. They're not hungering for super refined, super high quality ones. They're hungering for the more animalistic, basic, denser ones which come through the soma and the conditionings of the energosoma, and the quality of those energies, which are more instinctual, more animal, and very, very dense. But this particular chapter, even though the slide here was useful to talk about, this chapter, the 145, it's actually the idea of, well, what vehicle of yours out of all of these vehicles is predominating? Because we can see where we have a person who is dominated by the emotional body, by the psychosoma. Right? Not enough rationality in day-to-day decisions, you know, always dramatizing and exacerbating things unnecessarily in an undesirable way, because what we'll see is what makes the best decisions in our evolution is not our emotional body, it's our mental body. But what the pattern behavior, the best ideal sort of behavior we could organize in ourselves is the harmonized use of multiple vehicles of manifestation that make up the holosoma. If we have all of these vehicles operating in a harmonized way in our level of evolution here in the physical dimension, that's the ideal. Big challenge though, right? Alex, before I jump onto desomas, is there anything you wanna touch on over the last few slides we've talked about?
No, I think it's okay, Jack.
Okay. So the desoma, we've already talked about the desoma, and the desoma is what? It's a painless deactivation or discarding of a vehicle of manifestation of the consciousness. So it represents a change in the level of the consciousness in some way, right? So if the physical body is deactivated, discarded, disintegrates, and I'm hanging around doing something, what am I doing? What's the quality of my behavior, my thocenity, what I'm thinking and feeling, and how I'm processing things? You know, what tasks and efforts am I making? So the desoma, each death, desoma is another word for death. So desoma, soma is the Greek word for body. So desoma is like deactivation of a body, discarding of a body, getting rid of one of these bodies. Each of the different ones, because you've got multiple bodies, so you can have multiple different types of death. So the physical death we know about quite a lot, but there's other types of death, and we'll briefly talk on those. Each of them, though, is like can be a consciential shock. It can be a positive growth crisis, right? We often think of death as like, oh, it's a big problem, big drama. It's the end of things. Actually, many times it's the start of things. It's a transition, and it can be an evolutionary transition, a very positive thing for the consciousness experiencing it. And it's painless and for the better. You may have seen some movies that very much dramatize this, like What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, and people are in a bad condition. And that's kind of fair, even though it's, you know, Hollywood and dramatized. But the challenge is that we create our own reality. So if we have a little bit of lucidity after we're dead, we can really change a lot of things and our own condition in that environment. Things change very quickly there, unlike here, if we want it to. So this is the sort of the process that we're trying to educate about to some degree and help people deal with better. So here, look, each death actually constitutes a type of birth, which is such a turning a thing on its head, right? It constitutes a type of birth of the conscious in another far more evolved form of existence. So it's not a negative, bad thing at all, but what we're conditioned to do on this planet is dramatize, make a lot of noise, cry a lot, mourn, you know, send kind of pathological energies to the consciousness who's just died, which is a real shame. Alex, any comment?
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about the change, it's if you have something sure in this life, is everything change from time to time. So sometimes we are too much, we want to keep some status, but it doesn't last. Everything changes. And this is good because make us leave the condition in which we are to another one. So it is a kind of first for evolution, for evolving.
it's that theme of adapting again, isn't it? Like you mentioned in an earlier comment.
Yeah.
Adapting, adapt, grow, change, you know, have some
Yeah.
flexibility in your approach and what you're dealing with and how you're dealing with things, and be
Yeah.
mindful, be aware.
Yeah, and the other thing is Waldo sometimes use the term birth in different ways. It means a new thing, like when we can birth in this dimension, but you can birth in the extra-physical dimension also. So I think this means the new, the opportunity for the new experience.
Yeah. I'm going to rush through these slides because I don't want to take up too much time on these ones. And you can see from the images very much what's happening. First desoma, physical body's gone, and a lot of denser energies, but some still remain around the other body, the psychosoma. Second desoma, those denser energies around the psychosoma have gone. So all the connections to the last life and the last physical bodies have gone. This doesn't happen after every physical life. This starts to happen more frequently in your evolution, but that could be a really long time. So you can imagine, you could have energies now. If you've never gone through a second desoma, you could have energies in your holosoma that are back from when you were a plant, that were back from when you were an animal. And so you really are vegetating or, you know, re-centralizing. The tendency can be very strong, right? But once we start to have second desomas, things can accelerate, or ideally will accelerate much, much more. And the third desoma is you've no longer got the psychosoma, which is very much the bridge, the matrix for you to have physical lives. This third desoma only happens once in all of your evolutionary progress, development, path, journey, whatever you would like to call it. And this is when the conscious no longer needs to go to school, like here, let's say it's a school, to go through the process of learning and the cycle of intraphysical lives, whether as a plant, a subhuman animal, or a human, or whatever. And ultimately, this is inevitable for all consciousnesses within their evolutionary path. It's just a matter of when are we going to get there. I think that's it for the 3 desomas. I think, Alex, this is your chapter, actually, mate. Over to you to talk to more.
Yes. So about the 3 desomas, when we understand all the 3 desomas, of the 3 desomas, the biological death is the most disconcerting and radical of the greatest environment discrepancy of the ego. Well, so when you think about the first desoma, the second, and the third, the sum of the body is the more radical for the consciousness. Okay. Again, in this chapter, he talks about the rebirth, that we can consider 3 rebirths in the same life. The first is the conception, second, the parturition, and third, the maturity, about the 26 years, when we have 26 years in this dimension, okay? And what's another thing is important is the immolation. When you can discharge the physical body, and you are able to donate your energies and make the second desoma all together. So you have an opportunity to help other consciousness who needs this energy. When Jeffrey was talking about the second desoma, and it can take 2 to 3 days for this second desoma, the lucidity of the consciousness is what makes the difference, that you can do the second desoma by the same time you're doing the desoma. Is it clear, Jeffrey? Okay. Okay.
Next slide.
Okay, next. When you're talking about comparisons between occasional and final projections, I think it's interesting. He makes a disappointment of difference between the chords, the discoincidence, the sleep, the vision, the assistance, and death itself. So one, I think it's easy to understand that one's still connected with the silver cord, the other has the disconnection with the silver cord. One is temporary, that's coincidence, and the other is permanent, this coincidence from the physical body when you're dead, and so on. But I think it's interesting about this chapter is about this difference, what happens in when you're out of your body, projected, and when you have this final projection. Anything, Jeffrey, you want to?
Yeah, I also like with this one the simple idea of the condensation and the decomposition.
Oh yeah.
You know, the very last phrase in that chapter, like the resomer is the extra physical condensation process. Like, you know, when you're boiling water and the steam evaporates and condenses on the lid of the pot, kind of a thing. So resomer is this condensation process, extra physical condensation, and the desomer is the extra physical decomposition process. So, you know, the dissipation, evaporation, or gasification.
Yeah, and it's, oh, okay, go on, please.
No, you go.
No, and it's something that he talks about in the next chapter, about the comparisons between the psychosoma and the intraphysical and extraphysical consciousness. It's about the restriction that we have when we come to this dimension. He talks about 17 difference, but oh no, I just wrote that because it's too much, 17 to write it down. But this calms attention is about the restriction. That's what we were talking about, the condensation. So when you're out of your body, without your body, we can have a much more lucidity and then when we are here. And it's interesting when we go to possibilities, when the extraphysical consciousness has more power than what we have here. So he talks about the performance, that when the Conscientiogram has more possibilities than even with the projector, with lucidity. And many times we need help from the helpers in confrontations with this extraphysical consciousness. So I think this is interesting because sometimes people are romantic about the life or this kind of confrontations with energetic, energivorous consciousness. Oh, the good is gonna win or something like this. When we are out of the body, it's not that, it's the power of the energy, it's the lucidity that will help in this confrontation. So we need the helpers. It's a kind of symbiosis, because the helpers need our energies, but we need the lucidity of the helpers to act out of the body.
Yeah, this reminds
because that's not
the willpower,
our,
right?
yeah,
Sorry.
because that's not our environment.
Exactly, and like I remember sometimes the you know, the extra physical work that's happening and the people there, and they come with energy against you, and if you don't put your willpower and your focus and attention, they'll swallow you. But if you, like, you know, energetically speaking, but if you put enough, you'll be fine. But we're accustomed to being quite passive and not paying attention enough to those things, and being, I think we generally swallow too much here in this dimension. And
many times we don't see, but the helpers are helping us. They are close to us. They are protecting us from this extraphysical consciousness.
And they wait to see what's our position, you know. Sorry, Maggie.
No, I just want to mention that it's a good point. It caught my attention when I was reading that, because you are there and the extraphysical consciousness has more power than you, because he is in his environment.
That's it.
And he's in his environment, he has more lucidity than you, that is restricted by your physical body. So he will win. If you don't have, like you said, helpers, or he will win, because you don't have so much lucidity. You have to have a lot of lucidity, and that is difficult. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, but another thing that it's important to say, you don't have to be afraid to have your experience out of the body. Oh, so he said that the extraphysical consciousness can, the assediador, how do you say mesmo?
The intruders can attack me,
can be, the intruders can be, can beat me out of the body. So, oh, I'm not going to try this. You don't have to be afraid of, because whenever we do it, naturally, helpers are close to us. So you can still doing your projections, you can still helping the helpers in many different ways.
Capacities and ways, yep.
Yes.
Yep.
But it's a reality that without the helpers, it's harder.
100%.
Yeah.
Or more.
Okay.
Let me go to the next page, shall we?
So the next one's about the comparison between the psychosoma and the mental soma. Again, he makes 20 different factors between the difference of one to the other. But what calls me attention in these chapters, it's about the psychosoma. When he says that, Jeffrey talked a little about it, when the difference of the psychosoma and the mental soma. When the consciousness that predominantly use the psychosoma over the mental soma, besides leaning towards emotionalism, evidence at least 6 tendencies: symbols, crutches, insecurity, limitation of the universe is more limited, impoverishment, and discordance. And he talks about it. So this comes meditation, like who is more emotional, then who's a more mental soma, and likes to understand what's going on and use the lucidity. So it's a person that usually agree with the objective reality of the dimension of consciential life, where it's on occasion, more maturity, rationality, and more security about itself, and its self-taught sins are richer.
Yeah, I think those sections at the bottom of page 238, no, 338, and at the top of 339, yeah, they're great. They're really important to understand well, I think.
Yes. Oh, the next one's the comparisons between the mental soma of the intraphysical and the extraphysical consciousness. Again, he makes different characters between these difference. I think everybody read about it. So well, I think that's okay about it. What calls me attention is these next chapters, the relationships between the conscientious vehicles and consciential phenomena. And it's very interesting, like as much as intraphysical is the consciousness, it only manifests until the line 4. Mainly 1 and 2 and 3. As much
Revegetating and resensualizing.
Exactly. As much as the consciousness try to expand itself, to understand what's going on, more vehicles it uses every day. When we're talking about the synalectic, it's our holochakra, it's our psychosoma. When we are talking about developing the mental soma, so you use more all the vehicles during your life.
And that line number 4 is the pattern conduct we talked about in one of the previous chapters as well, where the harmonious use of all of those vehicles of manifestation is the ideal. And the way to get them into harmony is through the greater predominance of the mental soma, or at least, you know, enough presence and lucidity.
Yeah.
Easy to say, right? The theory is easy.
Very easy. And in this chapter, he makes a list of different phenomena in each body, or both 2 or 3 or more bodies together. What kind of phenomena happens? So when you're thinking about the human body, you can have different, like human body, energetic parabody, the self-telekinesis, extraphysical double visions. And so he makes this list of phenomena and what vehicles we are using when we have this kind of phenomena. So the only holochakra, like in the line 5, extraphysical parapyrogenes and physical multilocation. So I think that's interesting, because many times we say, oh, I think I had a clairvoyance. So what are the vehicles that you are using at that time when you're having this kind of phenomena? I think this is good to understand. I think this chapter is very interesting. So we can be more awareness about what the vehicles we are using at each kind of phenomena.
This, is it 155 or 156 we should be going to?
I think it's 156.
Okay.
Oh, whatever. Well,
156?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And these relationships between chakras and consciential phenomena. So we have the same way we can have vehicles with the phenomena. We can have which chakras are more affected with the phenomena, are participating more in each phenomena. So all the chakras you can have in the self-telekinesis, the double projections. When you're talking about the coronal chakra, you can talk about the projective catalepsy, the déjà vu, about the frontal chakra, the extraphysical double vision, consciential self-bilocation, the clairvoyance, extraphysical clairvoyance, laryngochakra, extraphysical projective psychophony. So you can try to understand the phenomena that we have with the vehicles and with the chakras. So I think it's very interesting.
It's very interesting here for me when I was reading, because I could see which topic, which our chakras were more related to the phenomena I had. And I see that the phenomena I used to have is related with those two chakras there. That's really interesting.
And it's interesting because sometimes we say, oh, I don't feel energy in this chakra. Any chakra, I think I have a block in my cardio chakra, for example. So you can understand the phenomena that you have and see if it has or not correlation with the chakra you don't feel the energy. And this is good to understand why you have more facility in some kind of phenomena and why it's harder sometimes for you on other kinds of phenomena. So when you make your mobilization of energies and feel your chakras, you can make a self-diagnose where you feel better your chakras. Each one, go to each one, exteriorize and absorb energies at each one of your chakras. Then you're gonna have your diagnosis. Then make a correlations about the phenomena that you have and see this list that Waldo wrote and make this correlation. I think this is very interesting to do.
Good idea. Really nice idea. Team, are we ready to go to our to the breakout rooms for maybe 15 minutes, something like that, or 10 minutes? How are we going time-wise?
So you're pretty good. You use 40 minutes. So we still have 20 minutes here if you want, or if
Okay.
we decide to go to break rooms. It depends of you, because we have 10 people today, a small group. So
Yeah.
we can go to, or we can stay here.
Why don't we
and
chat a little
just
bit and
stop
see,
the
and
record.
just see what people, questions or ideas people
Okay.
had, reflections, what caught their attention.
So thank you, everyone. That was a great discussion. And we're now going to present the technique for this month. So kind of the practical application of the theory that we have been reading about this month, right? So I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep.
The technique is our,
Yep.
okay. So this month's technique that we're going to practice is chapter 211, step counting technique. And this technique is using visualization, and it's about going on a specific trip or a journey. And the important thing is to notice the details of that journey that you're taking, and specifically to count the number of steps along the way. So one part of this technique that you can do is you imagine yourself actually leaving your house to visit a very close friend, and you're counting the steps that it takes to get to that friend's house. And then when you knock on the door, the friend will answer the door, hopefully. And then you return back to your home and you count the steps, taking the same number of steps that it took you to get there. So the other thing you could use with this technique is to do it within your own house or apartment. and you're just counting the steps to your kitchen or to your bedroom. Anyway, you are leaving your bedroom wherever you are and going to another room in your house, and you're paying attention to kind of the details of how many steps it takes and what are the different things that you can visualize along your way. So that's kind of the technique. So hopefully we can all practice it this month and come back next month and share your experiences. So the other thing before we close is we just wanted to invite you to next year's Bridge Book Club. We're going to have another good year and 2 months of different facilitators that are going to come and share, and we're going to continue reading Projectiology till the end. So we invite everybody to continue on the journey or to join reading Projectiology together and meeting in these different monthly meetings to discuss our experiences. So that's all I had.
Yes.
Magali, did you want to add anything else?
Yes, there is our Facebook that you can comment about that.
Yes, so Kim has set up a Facebook page as well, Facebook group. So we will be posting, everything that we post in our WhatsApp group, because not everybody participates in WhatsApp. We'll post it on the Facebook page. So we'll send out the link to everyone, and feel free to join the group or to request us or put in a request to us if you want to join the group. Anything else, Magali?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating. Thank you to our facilitators, Alexander and Jeffrey, for your insights and your knowledge. And thank you to everyone for participating with your experiences. And we'll see you next month, hopefully.
Yeah.
Enjoy your
Thank you.
holidays.
Bye.
Yes,
Thanks,
good
everyone.
holidays for all you.
Okay, bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
everyone.
much.
Goodbye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.